Welcome to 101 East. I'm Steve Chow. Sri Lanka is home to an estimated 90,000 war widows. They're young and old, from both sides of the 3 decades-long conflict. Many have debilitating injuries. Almost all of them are struggling to earn enough to survive. Now the island nation has a new government. Will it improve their plight? This week, Drew Ambrose examines one of the great challenges facing Sri Lanka, the forgotten widows of war.
This is the Sri Lanka most visitors see. Resorts, idyllic beaches, sacred Buddhist temples. $1.5 million tourists visited Asia's hot new destination last year. Those figures are increasing every year. It's an amazing transition, considering Sri Lanka's civil war only ended in 2009. For almost 3 decades, an ethnic conflict was fought between the Sinhalese majority and Tamil Tiger separatists, who wanted their own independent state. Up to 100,000 people were killed in the fighting, which the Tamils lost to the army. To this day, the atrocities in the brutal final stages of the war are fiercely debated. But what's forgotten is, for all the casualties, there's almost as many war widows left behind. Most of these women live in northern Sri Lanka, the Tamil heartland, which saw so much of the violence. We're heading to Jaffna, the largest city in the province. MASILAMANI JAYALAKSHMI is a widow who lives at the centre of a thriving fishing community here.
Life is harder compared with during the war. During the war, there were people helping each other out. Now it's very difficult. We're all women on our own with no one to help us.
Her husband and son were fishermen, but both were killed in the shelling. Now MASILAMANI has to work to support herself and what's left of her family.
Every morning I come here early to wait for a fishing boat to bring in the catch. My job is to sort the fish into various sizes from the nets.
Today, the fishermen have brought in a big catch, so she'll have plenty of work until the early afternoon. In return, she'll receive $2 and a few fish. But it's far from reliable employment.
If the boats don't go out to sea, my family will be stranded. It'll be difficult that day. When the bad weather comes, we starve.
MASILAMANI is the sole provider for 2 daughters and a grandson. She's borrowed money to pay for their school fees. It will take her years to repay.
When my daughter needs her fees, I have to run around and beg people to give me money. It makes me feel terrible. I'm not suicidal, but there's this feeling inside me that it would have been better to have been killed in the war than have to deal with this misery.
Like many war widows, MASILAMANI needs to work more than one job to make ends meet. 2 weeks ago, she opened this shop using contributions from the local community. She's fighting hard to secure her future, but her first attempt at opening a store failed.
This shop has to be a success. I can't depend on fish. If it fails, the difficulties and hardships are unimaginable. Before the war, when my son and husband were out at sea, we were thinking of buying a big boat, then a bigger boat. I never dreamt I'd be so downtrodden. I have this stall while other families have men and boats.
Masilamani wishes there were more government schemes to help widows support their families and get businesses up and running.
I think there should be more government support for households like mine. We need help. So far, nothing has been done. If the government doesn't look into this, nothing will change for us.
In another district of Jaffna, not far away, this community centre for widows is a hive of activity every Saturday. The service is run by ATHAUDA SHYLA, a war widow who has made it her mission to help other women in the same situation.
இது வந்து உப்பும் மஞ்சளும் போட்டு கலந்துட்டு 5 நிமிஷம் வெச்சிருந்துட்டு எண்ணெயில போட்டு கிளறோம்.
Today, I'm joining her for a cooking class she's giving to the local widows.
என்னன்னு சொன்னா நாங்க இத வந்து எங்கட பெண்களுக்கு வந்து ஒரு வருமானத்தை இட்டு செல்றதுக்கு அவர்கள் வந்து என்னன்னு சொன்னா இதுல வந்து அவட பிள்ளைகளுக்கு வருமானமாம் இருக்குது சேமிப்பு திட்டங்களை வந்து கூட தொடர்ந்து செய்யக்கூடிய மாதிரியும் இருக்குது இதுல வர லாபங்களை எடுத்து.
These women often prepare food like this prawn pickle paste, which they sell at the market. It's a small-scale business, but their efforts are generating a reliable wage for more than 100 widows with few options.
Okay. இதர்க்க சாப்பிட்டு பாருங்க உங்கட தாரகாவால ஓடுறது ஓட்டம் ஓடுது.
So this is prawns and pickles and all sorts of things. I'll give it a try, right?
இந்த இஜாவோட பானம் பண்ணி இருக்குது. என்னென்ன டேஸ்டா இருக்கும் ஒரு மணத்தையும் அது பிறகு தான் டேஸ்டா இருக்கும்.
It's very spicy. It's very spicy indeed. Good.
ன்னு சொல்லி கொடுக்கடா.
The centre is doing more than providing cooking classes. Each widow here contributes a bit of the money they earn back to the centre. And with that pool of cash, the centre can give out small loans to the widows for business initiatives and family emergencies. Impressed by their financial management skills, Finland now provides them aid.
Our collective was solving our own problems. NGOs were wondering how we were surviving.
But when ATHAUDA first started this service, it wasn't easy. Many widows were afraid to join because they faced intimidation from the community.
It's tough for widows. Some men say, live honorably, stay in the house. But we're defying them with our ventures.
ARUNA has travelled to other parts of Sri Lanka and even Nepal to teach war widows how to empower themselves. She says if any help comes for widows, it does so at a grassroots level.
There's no unity. The challenges facing widows in the East are different to those in the North. Small community groups compete with each other for money.
Another way she helps widows is by making house visits to listen to their problems.
Because of the war, my mother became a widow. I'm a widow. My sister is a widow. My daughter is a widow. I wanted my youngest daughter to be married, but people here won't come forward with a groom because of our bad luck.
These are problems ARUNA is familiar with. She says that sharing her own story with them helps.
I try to boost their morale. I tell them, don't give up. You can be like anyone else. I tell them, lots of women are widows. Don't segregate yourself.
ARUNA's husband was a fisherman who was killed at sea by the Sri Lankan Navy in 1994. It angers her that only widows on the winning side of the conflict, the Sinhalese, receive any financial assistance.
If their people are dead, they receive aid. But we're getting nothing. We're getting no support. There is action being taken to get aid for the Sinhalese widows. They're getting houses, but no one is helping the Tamil widows with support.
To hear the other side of the story, we travelled to Polonnaruwa in central Sri Lanka, where a Sinhalese widow has agreed to meet us.
My husband died on April 13, 2008. My youngest son's birthday. That morning, he called me and talked to our son. He was ringing from a lookout in a big tree, 200 meters from the front line. When he climbed down, he was shot dead. I only found out that afternoon.
ARUNA KANTHI ATHAUDA was married to a soldier in the Sri Lankan army. Since his death, she receives a monthly pension. ARUNA lives on a compound with her husband's family. Many widows like her won't remarry because they would lose half the money that they receive.
When my husband was alive, he told me not to remarry because I would not get his salary and will not be able to look after the children. I will never break that promise I gave to him.
ARUNA also says she won't marry again for the sake of her 2 children. Her eldest son is still racked with grief over his father's death. She says he was teased at school for not having a father, so he left and became a Buddhist monk. ARUNA can only visit him once a week at his monastery. She's allowed an extra visit today because he has the flu.
Often in remarriages, you inherit your new husband's children, and it causes your own children to think they will be forgotten. I don't want to put my children in that situation. That's why I will never remarry.
ARUNA has more financial security than the desperate women I met in the north. But having money brings its own problems. In Sri Lanka, many army widows end up fighting with their husbands' relatives over the benefits. ARUNA's mother-in-law lives next door, but the 2 women have barely spoken in 2 years.
My mother-in-law has issues. She hates me spending the pension. When I go to town to buy things, she tells villagers I'm cavorting with other men. She told villagers I'm having an affair with the postman. She has paid drunks to knock on my door at night, so the community thinks I'm working as a prostitute. I can't go to my husband's grave because of my mother-in-law. There is a fence around the gravesite, and I'm not allowed to visit.
With my colleague Manel, I decide to pay the mother-in-law a visit. She has lost not 1, but 2 sons, and is proud to show me the graves of the fallen soldiers.
So, Susana Bumi kanave e unata Bumi dananave kyane egolang me. Et oba hitue me wage mevani thanaka me wage valalan ai hitue.
I feel as though my children are still with me when I can see them here.
We ask about her daughter-in-law. She denies treating ARUNA badly.
I'm the one who asked him to join the army, because otherwise they had no way to support their 2 children. And that's how she still supports them, from that salary.
There's obviously some negative feelings there.
I know my son's hardship when he was in the war. He lived in bunkers, in the trees. He dealt with mosquitoes. This woman has no respect for that. She enjoys life. She wastes his money. If you look at her clothesline, she buys new dresses. Only my son has contributed to that family. He built the house as well. She's done nothing. I'm only having one meal a day. That's how I'm living. So if I can do that kind of thing, why can't she do the same?
But family squabbles don't compare with the desperate ordeal faced by many Tamil widows. We're heading to the north coast, on a highway where until recently, checkpoints and soldiers were stationed every few kilometres. The heavy military presence is now gone, but there's still this sense of two Sri Lankas. One, the paradise of the tourist brochures. The other, war-ravaged communities, like Mullaitivu. Sheldon mined this coastal district was a Tamil Tiger stronghold and formed the front line at the end of the conflict. NAYAGASEELAN ANTANITTA is a social worker at the local hospital and works with Tamil families here. She's taking me to meet Sivalinga Maheswary. Hello.
அம்மா உங்களை சந்திக்க வேறு வந்திருக்கிறேன் வாங்க உங்களை சந்திச்சு கதைப்போம் எப்படி சும்மா இருக்கிறீங்களா வாங்க வீட்டை சந்திச்சு
Before the war, Sivalinga lived on this farm with her family. Today, she's all alone. She lost her husband, her son, and an arm in the final stage of the conflict.
We were taking shelter in a bunker. It was raining. Water started seeping in, so I came out. That was when we were hit by an artillery shell. I lost my arm and was evacuated to a refugee camp. The heat was unbearable. My fresh wounds became septic. The bone was hanging out. There were even maggots. Many people like me were taken away to safety by boat. People were dying. I thought I would too.
She lost her husband, a grown son, and her arm. She became very depressed. With therapy, we've helped her deal with her depression. And now she can take care of herself. But she can't earn an income.
1 in 10 Tamil widows has a disability like Sivalinga, according to the local government.
I was given better housing by an assistance group, but it was taken away because I am single and families were the priority. I got $180 compensation from the government to resettle, but since then, there is not enough help.
You don't have a limb and you don't have your husband. How hard is life for you?
I can't work. I can't even comb my own hair. I have brothers, but they are struggling too and can't help me.
Every month, she receives just $2 in government assistance. But Sivalinga needs a water pump and help to farm her land. Yet the meagre assistance she receives is barely enough to buy food.
My future is uncertain. It's probably what I'm dealing with now. I'm not asking for much. Just a few dollars would help.
NAYAGASEELAN says widows in this patriarchal society have been the last to get help, even though they're among the most desperate.
Before the war, these women depended entirely on their husbands. They had no skills. As widows, they struggle because there have been no programs to teach them how to fend for themselves. Their problems are not properly understood by the government and NGOs. As a result, they're often scammed and taken advantage of.
Who's to blame for this situation?
Of course, the war. But if the governments and NGOs had given widows the training and skills they need to survive on their own, then life could have moved on for them. But no one in civil society has shown interest in helping or even understanding the plight of war widows.
Sri Lanka's buzzing capital Colombo is a world away from the conditions up north. There's no shortage of construction or development here, and there's certainly no sense of the continuing struggle of the Tamil widows I have met. Shanti Sachitanandam is a women's rights activist who runs programs for widows. She says immediately after the war, the government and army tightly controlled war-affected areas, and it was difficult to provide help.
There was so much trauma, but we were not allowed access. The NGOs were given permission only to implement building and infrastructure programs. And if we anyway applied to do counseling or psychosocial support, that was rejected.
She says the army was often there to oversee their public meetings with widows.
They were not scared to attend, but when they came, they were never frank and open. So we can't have an open discussion about the real problems that they face.
In all honesty, on a scale of 1 to 10, under this duress, how effective were programs back then in helping widows?
I would say, if you say 1 is the lowest, we were able to perform 2, maximum 3.
Today there's greater optimism because Sri Lanka's political landscape has changed. In January, a new government swept to power. President Sirisena has promised better reconciliation with those affected by war, including widows. I'm on my way to meet the new regime's Minister of Women's Affairs, Chandrani Bandara.
What programs are being considered to help these war widows?
Now, our government, we have just started. It's just hardly 3 months. We have initiated several programs, like livelihood programs with credit schemes, like entrepreneurship training, and also especially like counseling. And also we are really doing so many other programs like giving them on credit basis for self-employment. So there are so many things which we have started.
But do you acknowledge that there are a lot of widows falling through the cracks?
There are issues everywhere, so you can't say that there are no issues. So we will have to look into it and see what we could do about it.
What else strikes me is the Tamil widows really have nothing, and these Sinhalese army widows have, you know, a pension. Is the government considering any kinds of economic inducements for Tamil widows who are struggling in places like Mullaitivu?
I don't think the Tamil widows are not taken care of. Actually, the priority is given to these widows, and especially in those areas there are so many programs which are taking place. So I don't think the Tamil widows are isolated, because they are very much involved in these programs, and there are progress there.
You think there's progress?
There is progress happening, yes.
Really?
I think we will have to do a bit more work, but we are planning to strengthen those programs a little bit more and see that they have a better life.
After meeting just a few of the 90,000 war widows across Sri Lanka, it's clear that finding solutions that help them all is not easy. They're different ages, different ethnicities, and face an array of complex challenges. The war is over, but this country will be dealing with their problems for a very long time. More ideas and action are needed. Otherwise, war widows will remain the most vulnerable survivors in this battle-scarred nation.